Hi, it's Thursday, September 26th, and we're tracking Major Hurricane Helene in the Gulf of Mexico. The system has continued to rapidly intensify in the Gulf of Mexico, as expected today, unfortunately, and we are expecting landfall sometime tonight in the Big Bend region of Florida. The system is currently centered about west of Tampa now, maybe a little south of due west, but this is a very powerful hurricane with winds now up to 125 miles per hour, so we're on the cusp of getting to Category 4 intensity there. One thing I do note in this visible imagery is you can see these textured cloud tops on the eastern and western side rotating in a counterclockwise fashion. These are very deep convective bursts that are continuing to wrap around in a violent nature around the eye. And what these help do is they help strengthen the eye wall so you get stronger winds in there, but also it helps clear out the eye. And when you get the eye more clear, you get more pressure falls. And as a result of that, you get the winds to increase as well from that. And this whole pattern is forecast to continue up to landfall. Really, wind shear is not going to be a big deal until after landfall. You can see here on the water vapor imagery, we might be starting to see some impacts of some westerly or southwesterly shear. We do see some increasing dry air in the vicinity on the west side, and we do see some of this outflow being pushed perhaps a little bit east. But this shear is not going to be impacting the system long enough as it's offshore, unfortunately, to really weaken it. And if any weakening does occur from it, it will not be to any appreciable level, and it will likely still be probably a Category 4 here coming into the Big Bend region. Now, we talked about this was going to be a big hurricane, and this is very clear in the recon data that we had just from a Air Force plane that just left. You can see they're just leaving now, and you can see the very expansive hurricane force wind field on the eastern side. The western side is still fairly weak, but the eastern side is very strong, and this is where we also have those major hurricane force winds in the eastern part of the core. And all of this hurricane force wind is going to be pushing Gulf water right into areas like Tampa Bay and the entire Big Bend region of Florida. And we are likely to see a catastrophic storm surge event in the Big Bend region, more of the likes that we have not seen really at all in the record books in the modern era. We haven't had a storm this big. This is one of the more big storms that we've had in the Gulf of Mexico. We haven't really had this come into the Big Bend region of Florida this far east and at this intensity. The closest analog in recent years is Ida, but that one was a bit smaller, and that one came in further towards the east, so storm surge was not maximized in much of the Big Bend. Unfortunately, with this one, we're coming further west, closer to, say, Appalachia Bay or Indian Pass, so this is going to put much of the Big Bend region right in the way of, unfortunately, like I said, catastrophic storm surge. Now, as we look at the forecast come from the Hurricane Center, we'll get the new cone from them, and seems to be an issue on their end. There's not showing any watches and warnings. We'll go and get the latest forecast cone here, so we can see some of the watches and warnings at least. We have a hurricane warning in effect from about Apalachicola down to Tampa and Clearwater, and a tropical storm warning. This includes the entirety of the state, South Carolina and Florida and Georgia, and we also have a hurricane warning extending very far inland, almost to Atlanta in western Georgia. Now, we don't have tropical storm alerts in Tennessee, Kentucky, and areas around there, but we will be having some more high wind and wind advisories coming in, as this system will be losing its tropical nature as it moves up there, but the wind threat will still remain. You can see here by 2 p.m. Friday, non-tropical on this forecast, but still has tropical storm force winds, and some models have tried to push out some winds of 60 miles per hour, at least some gusts in some of these areas. So this could also be a significant wind event up here alongside rain event for this entire portion of the U.S. This is a very large hurricane. You can see the entire peninsula of Florida is in the tropical storm force wind field here. Now, I talked about storm surge. The storm surge forecast has not really changed all too much. We're expecting, again, 15 to 20 feet of storm surge in the Big Bend region. Closer down past Cedar Key, 10 to 15 feet, and on down to Tampa Bay, you're looking at a general 5 to 12 foot surge. In Tampa Bay itself, 5 to 8 feet there. And even way down here in southwestern Florida, including areas like Naples and Fort Myers, a surge of 3 to 5 feet can be expected. And as the system does push in, we'll have continued onshore flow along the northern Florida coast and into Georgia and South Carolina, and that could lead to some water rises along there. Rainfall-wise, like I talked about, is going to still be a significant issue. We've already had a lot of rainfall across this region today, and this is going to continue. We could have some widespread totals of 2 to 4 inches across much of Florida, Alabama, Georgia, into South Carolina, but also more localized areas, getting in excess of 6 inches in some places, and especially in the Appalachian Mountains here in northern Georgia, western South Carolina, and western North Carolina. This is a very significant flood event, likely incoming, as we are looking at potentially over a foot of rainfall in some areas along these mountainous regions, and this could lead to a lot of flooding issues. And as a result, we do have a high risk of flash flooding from the Florida Panhandle on through the Appalachian Mountains, and the National Weather Service is using very strong wording with this flood event. So if any flash flood warnings are issued for your area as the system comes north, please take proper action and listen to those warnings as they are issued for a very good reason. We also have an elevated risk of flash flooding further northwest, as we are now expecting a widespread region of 2 to 4 inches of rain across western Kentucky and western Tennessee. And we are in a drought, so we do need some of this rain, but too much of a good thing can be bad, and this could lead to some flooding issues and water rises along rivers and creeks over the region as we get this rainfall as the system stalls here. Now, it's not going to be the only concern we have as well inland. We'll also have the risk of tornadoes. We already have some tornado warnings active. I can show you this on radar, which you can also see the inner core of Helene way better here, but you can see we have a tornado warning in place for the Florida Panhandle and one just north of Fort Myers, and this is going to continue as we get these more outer bands coming in into the Florida Peninsula. And you can see on this risk here from the Storm Prediction Center, we could have outer bands coming into areas in Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina, and they've introduced an enhanced risk of tornadoes here. This includes areas like Wilmington, Myrtle Beach, Charleston, and Savannah and Jacksonville. And this does continue. It moves up the coast, but does continue in areas like Myrtle Beach and Wilmington, North Carolina throughout the day on Friday. So a lot of impacts with this storm. Stay safe in Florida as the system does pass through. Hopefully the impacts won't be too bad, but as of right now, this looks like a very bad scenario for Florida. And this will be my last video on the storm, as the forecasting phase is pretty much done here. But now we've got a few other systems to watch in the Atlantic and still in the East Pacific. We're going to go to the big view now, as we are now done with Helene, but we've got several systems active. We've got Tropical Storm Isaac here, way far in the northern Atlantic. This is forecast to track east, and it's forecast to track right now north of the Azores. We'll keep an eye on that just in case it tries to bring some impacts there. But as of right now, it's forecast to stay north of there and could become a hurricane before it moves into cooler waters way up there. We've also got a tropical wave sitting out here in the eastern Atlantic. This is likely to develop in the next couple of days, though it does have some dry air, so that will likely limit its intensification as it comes into the central Atlantic, and this is forecast to be no threat to land, really forecast just to turn north and impact nobody. We also have a tropical wave that's in the eastern Caribbean right now. This is forecast to push west and may interact with some other features as they get into the western Caribbean, and development is possible there as we go into the next week. And you see here, the Hurricane Center has introduced a new area of interest with a 20% chance of development right now in the Western Caribbean. Way too early to talk about specifics with this one of what it could do later down the line, but it's just something to watch as we go throughout the next several days. And finally, we have not tropical storm, we have Hurricane John sitting off the west coast of Mexico. You can see it here. It does seem to be struggling as it is very close to land, so we're not getting much intensification from the system, which is a very good thing. But the unfortunate aspect of this is really stalling. The forward motion right now is about 2 miles per hour, and this is unfortunately leading to a large plume of moisture just coming right into Mexico continuously. And we have unfortunately gotten a lot of rainfall in this part of Mexico, and the images out of areas like Acapulco have not been good. Houses being collapsed from the heavy rainfall, lots of flooding in streets in the metro area, and that's just in one area. We've had a ton of heavy rainfall across a wide region here, and this catastrophic flooding is forecast to continue over the next several days, as John is not forecast to move all too much. You can see here on their newest forecast, maybe we finally get it out here by the late weekend, but as of right now, this thing here is here to stay. And it's still a hurricane as well, so we are also increasing still that wind threat, especially for the southwestern coast of Mexico, as we still have it with winds of 75 miles per hour. But the good news is, intensity-wise and wind impact-wise, it is interacting with land right now, so intensification beyond this point seems more unlikely at this time. Now, unfortunately, the heavy rainfall is not going to really stop. On top of the rainfall we've already gotten over the past several days, we could expect a wide region of 200 millimeters or higher, with some localized spots getting in excess of 500 millimeters of rainfall over this region as John continues pushing generally west-northwest. So stay safe in Mexico as John pushes through. That's all that I've got for today. Again, stay safe in Florida as our hurricane comes in tonight. And if there's any drastic changes, I'll have updates on my Twitter page, which you can find in the description. That's all that I've got for now. Thanks for watching.